Here's a guy who forgot to set the intro video. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Inc. of South Florida. We are, as always, very proud to be part of the Variety Sports Network. And the show comes to you from the Frank Walker Law Studio, where we are drinking but not driving. Frank would be very, very proud of us. I don't know where the other two yahoos are. Apparently, they didn't get the memo that it was a show night tonight, which I find ridiculously hard to believe, seeing as they have been talking about it all week. Anyway, welcome in Aaron and Joe and Cliff and Jen's in, and hey, Tom, and everyone else that joins us at their own time. Great show tonight. We'll talk a little bit about the rules stuff that's been proposed. We'll talk obviously what's going on with the Steelers and free agency and the debacle that is the quarterback shuffle. I don't even know what to call it. And we'll dive into Mike Tomlin a little bit tonight as well, and just what his overall impact is on this team right now. And let me welcome in Randy Fiechner Nacho Dip. Yes.
What's the problem?
No problem. We've had some drinks, right?
Not this guy.
How's your bracket doing, Mr. Nacho?
It's okay, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's I guys, I've watched 5 minutes of college basketball this whole year, so I couldn't even.
I'm into it, which makes it even worse when I don't get the picks right. But whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'm also into it, but I always say you pick with your head and you root with your heart. So like I picked Clemson to go a few rounds, but McNeese was so much fun to watch. I was rooting for him anyway. So like at that point, and I guess if I had money riding on it, I would probably care more. But all the competitions I'm in are just for fun anyway. So
yeah,
it's kind of like, whatever, bragging rights, but it's more fun to see something cool happen.
Absolutely. I think at this point in my life, because believe me, I was telling students today that, back in my day, we used to skip school on this day. You'd bolt after your third or fourth hour class because you'd get home and watch it. That was a time when the only TVs in the school were the ones on wheeled carts. And, there was only like 3 of them, and your teacher sure as hell wasn't going to get one just to show the NCAA. So you'd be like, I'm not feeling so good. And you'd head out, the old NCAA illness there. But, it's fun, and hopefully everybody enjoys it and all that good stuff. But lots of stuff to get to. So until Ben arrives, I think he's restarting his computer, technical errors on his end. I want to talk about the rules a little bit. Ian, was there one particular rule proposal that caught your attention at all? The Lions had a couple. The Steelers even threw one out. And of course the Packers and the tush push. But anything that caught your attention?
The one I really liked was the one about defensive holding not being an automatic first down. Yep. And there were some pretty good stats out there. I don't remember them off the top of my head to back it up, that a vast majority of the defensive holding calls came in third and longer than 5 situations, where if it was just a repeat of a down, it would not have been a first down based on the penalty yards alone. So I think when you start to talk about drive extenders for the offense. Like defensive holding is one of those ones where it can be 3rd and 20 and you get a 5-yard penalty that's an automatic first down, which is kind of bogus. So I like that one a lot. I think it's a good proposal because it also doesn't necessarily preclude the offense from picking up a first down on the 3rd and now 5 yards shorter. They just don't get an automatic first down on a 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. I still think pass interference should be an automatic first down, but just defensive holding because of how touchy it is. I like the proposal there to make it not an automatic first down, just to replay the down.
I also love the proposal, and I also love the fact that you mentioned this. This isn't necessarily an anti-offense change, because if you're a fantasy person, all right, it actually, I would say, increases your chances of more yards, perhaps big plays, perhaps touchdowns. Just because now, as you said, instead of it being 1st and 10, now you could possibly be looking at 3rd and 5 again. And well, most teams in the NFL are going to throw the ball on 3rd and 5. So I'm right with you. Scarps, was there, is that the one that caught you, or was there a different one?
Yeah, I mean, that caught my attention, and I agree. I think it's it's always we're always talking about entertainment, right? And to me, an automatic first down on a play where you could literally call defensive holding on every play, so that it becomes sort of subjective,
right?
I think it just adds another exciting play to the mix. That being said, I do think that they should implement the postseason overtime rules in the regular season. I've been very, I don't want to call myself an advocate, but I've been a strong supporter of, I'm willing to extend a game an extra 15 minutes if they get the calls right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
If you're going to add another 30 minutes to my entertainment, I'm fine with it. And one of the rules that the Lions proposed, and I get why they're doing it, and I get why they proposed this, and I think it's a little bit of gamesmanship amongst their division to talk about. The number 1 seeds gets the number 1 seed, but after that they sort by order of wins. Now, that does take away the importance of winning a division to an extent, but also, how many times over the years have we seen a division winner that's 500 or maybe a game above 500,
right?
Beat a team, for instance, this year, like Minnesota had to go to LA, and Minnesota was struggling. And I do wonder how that game would have turned out if it was in Minnesota and not or actually ended up being in Arizona because of the ethics of the fire.
Right, you're right, because the fire.
But still, the Viking. But then it gets back to the Vikings could have just beaten the Lions in that Sunday night football finale.
Yep,
and it would have been different. But I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. And I don't know. I like the dialogue, and I appreciate teams that are willing to talk about things that maybe go against the
norm.
Yeah, the norm, or like, oh, you couldn't change that rule. How dare you even talk about it? So, it's and then the tush push is another thing. But I'm a big fan of not allowing an automatic first down for defensive holding. And also, give me if overtime means each team gets a possession no matter what, I'm all for it. I mean, and that's the other thing too, is how often, I didn't look at this, but how often do teams actually score a touchdown on the first possession in overtime? For me, I think about like two field goals back to back, and then the next score wins. So it's not like it even happens that often. But in the instance that it did, hell, okay, let's say, as a Steeler fan, we're facing the Bengals, and on the first play of overtime, Jamar Chase catches a 75-yard touchdown. And we're like, fuck, it's over. Oh, actually, it's not. Because we're going to go 4 and out and lose anyway. But it's nice to know that that's there. And I really don't think it would add that much time to a game.
I don't either. You're already investing 3 hours anyway. You might, what's another 15 minutes at that point? I'd like to welcome Dirty Hippie on the Iahaskuberg. He has arrived. Ben, we are just starting things out, having a little conversation about the Iahaskuberg. And any rule proposals that jumped out at you at all?
I liked the idea of giving the defense, not giving the offense a first down in the event that there was a illegal contact or holding call. However, statistically, I saw something that said that greater than 75% of those calls were made more than 5 yards down the field. So basically, it's just going to give DBs a license to do it. Or refs are going to be worried about missing it, so they're going to throw more flags.
Possibly.
Which is going to slow down the game even more. So now I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's a ticky-tack call. There are an awful lot of cheap first downs that are awarded because of it.
Yep.
But by the same token, when the contact is taking place that far downfield, and it does give DBs, hey, it's just a 5-yard penalty. Fuck it. This guy's beating me, and I'm 8 yards deep, and he's beating me already. Yeah, I'll just hold him. It's a 5-yard penalty. I live to fight another down. It's fine. So, there are too many rules, I think, that give an advantage to the offense, right? But
yes, no doubt.
Maybe you make it a spot foul inside of 10 yards. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. Is there a happy medium in there somewhere? And Ian, to your point, you and Scarps were both talking about in terms of the seeding in the playoffs. I mean, I remember the one year, I think it was a Peyton Manning Colts team. Weren't they like 12-4, but won they got the wild card and had to go out to the Chargers, who were 8-8, and I think the Chargers beat them out there.
Yeah.
And Tony Dungy
they came
was
to Pittsburgh the next week and lost.
Correct. And I think it was Tony Dungy that was going, crazy about, we've got to reseed this. And I think owners are, I don't care if I'm an owner and my team goes 8-8 and wins the division. Hey, I won the division. I'm getting a home game.
Right.
I'm not giving that up.
I think that's why it won't change anyway. The owners aren't going to give that up. I mean, even if we think it's a good idea, it isn't going to happen because the owners are going to be like, yeah, no.
The Steelers did have an interesting proposal. They and you guys can fill in the blanks where I'm not 100% accurate here, but they suggested during that tampering period that you are able to have like a Zoom or Google Meet call, whatever you want to call it, with a potential free agent. And I got to give credit to, I think it was Steelers Takeaways on Twitter who said it's not surprising it came from the Steelers. They don't want anybody to see their facility. But that's funny because it's true. What am I missing there, Ian, with that part of it?
See, I actually thought it was the other way because you can't have players visit your facility now until the league year actually starts.
Yeah, 4 p.m. that Wednesday. This year would have been the 12th. Yeah.
Right. So you can negotiate with their agents, but you can't actually talk to the player. So I took that as, you could have one call with the player and their agent before, during the legal tampering period. And then during that time, if you agree to terms of a contract, you can also, the team can arrange for that player to travel to their facility.
Okay.
Once the league year starts. So it's kind of messy now that if a player wants to come before that, they kind of have to do it on their own dime, and teams can't organize it, or they have to wait until the league year actually starts. Whereas I think the Steelers are saying, hey, if you agree to terms with a player and you're going to be under contract, why can't we arrange for them to travel to our facility so they can actually be here to sign on the start of the league year? So I don't think it was quite what Steelers takeaways was saying, that they don't want them to see the facility. I think they want to try and get them there quicker.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you brought up an interesting point, and you guys might know this, Scarps, you certainly may. When a free agent comes to your facility, your city, do they pay, or does the team pay to fly them there? I don't know the answer.
I don't.
I'm just curious. I'm guessing.
I was never. I was definitely never a part
that
of
wasn't your pay
conversation.
grade.
But also, that would be so shitty if you didn't accommodate the player. But then again,
well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, obviously, when like right now in the draft process, when you've got a lot of these young men are coming in for their one of 30 visits and stuff. Now, the NFL team can fly those guys in, right?
I
mean, because at one time they were just poor college students. Of course, now they all got NIL money and everything else. But
I'm almost 100% certain that they for college visits they would fly the kids in. So I don't know why they wouldn't do it for the pros.
That was my thinking as well. Yeah.
Wasn't there a team prior to last season that flew a head coach candidate out for the interview coach?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than sending the jet, which is typically what either sending a jet or chartering a flight, which is typically what teams do. They flew him out coach for the interview.
Oh,
and
was that
was
that Ben Johnson going to Washington?
No, it wasn't Washington.
No. What was
I want to say it was the Titans, but I'm not positive.
Maybe you're right. I remember the story that there was something like that, and
they were like, okay, yeah, nothing says I want to be the coach of this team like a middle seat and coach.
Hey, you look like Ben Johnson. Is that you? No.
Are you the offensive coordinator?
Just a regular guy.
Before we shift gears to more Steelers exclusive content, Ian, did you have one more comment to make, or did you make that already?
Oh, I was just going to add on the division champs getting a home game.
Yeah.
That I like it how it is that you're rewarded for winning your division. And there have been plenty of instances over time. The Colts one, there was one, I think, where the Jaguars were like 13-3. I think that might have been 2005. And they were the number 5 seed and had to go on the road.
Yeah.
And the Beast Quake game, I think, with Marshawn Lynch, where the Seahawks were really bad and had to play a pretty good Saints team out there.
Yeah.
But if you're that much better, you should be able to win a road playoff game. I mean, road playoff games are hard to win, don't get me wrong. But if you're that much better, and I've run numbers and statistics will show that over the last 10, 15, 20 years, however you want to cut it, the number 5 seeds generally do have a more regular season wins than the number 4 seeds. So usually the 4 seeds are playing a better team, that 4th division champ is not the 4th best team in the conference.
That's a good point.
If you're good enough, you can go win a road playoff game.
Yeah, no argument for me at all. Shifting gears to the Steelers, and look, there's about 3 or 4 different avenues we can go here. And I'm going to start with this one. Scarps, were you? I don't know if surprise is the right word. What did you think of the fact that Mike Tomlin and several other Steelers officials were at Alabama's pro day watching Jalen Milroe? What do you take from that?
So the initial, and I get why it was a big deal initially, but Alabama, even without Nick Saban, has some athletes.
Oh yeah.
So they're doing their due diligence, and it wasn't a dinner just with Jalen Milroe. It was a dinner with all the Alabama guys. So like, obviously the Steelers need a quarterback, and they're looking for a quarterback this season and long term.
Yep.
So it's natural for us to say, So it's natural for us to be like, oh, they're interested in Jalen Milroe. And I can see why they would be. He seems like a boom or bust project. And, in this league, all it takes is one quarterback. Now, I don't think he has the skills or the skills like a Jaden Daniels or anything like that. But, I get it. But I don't read into it too much. I mean, shit, a couple years ago, I thought they were going to draft Malik Willis in the first round.
Many of us did. And
then they drafted Kenny Pickett. But, was that the same year? No.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So
is Willis a free agent now?
They had us. Yeah, he is. So they had us all fooled.
I think he's under contract with the Pack still, isn't he?
No, he's a UFA, right?
One more year for Green Bay.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not surprised. I mean, Alabama's a good school. Even without Nick Saban.
Right. And I mean, I expected him to be there anyway. It just, obviously the way people write things up these days, they make it sound as if the Steelers were only there to see Jalen Milroe. And no, Alabama's loaded with talent. Doesn't matter what kind of year they had. Ian, did you want to follow up on something?
Yeah. So a couple things on pro days. Tomlin goes to usually the same ones every year.
Yep.
Goes to Clemson, goes to Georgia, goes to Alabama, usually goes to Ohio State, Michigan, sometimes Penn State. It's a surprise when he goes to ones other than those.
Right.
If he goes to Texas or Oklahoma or somebody else, Notre Dame, like that's noteworthy. So the other thing that Tomlin has said multiple times that he's done is that when he goes to pro days, he's not just scouting the guys who are there this year, that he'll ask the question of who am I going to be here to watch next year, and then start to, get those guys on his radar and start thinking about those guys too. That said, which I don't.
In Alabama's case, the wide receiver.
Yeah. Well, also Milroe specifically is a guy that they've now had multiple points of contact with.
Yep.
They met with him at the Senior Bowl. They had a formal meeting at the Combine. Now they've had dinner with him before his pro day and some other guys, but with Milroe. And they brought Tom Arth, their quarterback coach, to Alabama's pro day, which I think is probably the most telling thing that there's some interest there, that they brought their quarterback coach specifically to his pro day to work him out. So there's definitely some interest. Whether or not it goes anywhere, we'll see. But I think there's definitely interest there.
Ben, describe your reaction when the Pittsburgh Steelers draft Jalen Milroe in the third round.
Mixed.
I was hoping for a little more from you, but
yeah, sorry. I think if you want Milroe, you're going to have to burn maybe even a second to get him, because he's got the big arm. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what teams want. They want the guy with the big arm. Look at Josh Allen when he came out. There was all kinds of people who were like, oh, this guy's never going to, come on. He's never going to turn into anything. And he worked it out, and now he's a pretty damn good quarterback, NFL quarterback, no less. And it's because he's got that big arm, and he can squeeze the ball into the tight windows. The flip side of that is, Justin Fields got the big arm. He can squeeze it into tight windows. He just doesn't know when to throw it. And he also throws the ball on short and intermediate routes very hard, so guys can't catch it. He can't put touch on the ball. So, that's the downside to going ahead and making that decision. This guy, to me, is a cross between, and I said this week on Slack, we were talking about the guy. He's a cross between Jameis Winston and Lamar Jackson, in so much as he will have brilliant plays where you're like, wow, that is amazing. And then he'll have, the next series, he'll have a catastrophic play where he throws a stupid pick six. And you're like, dude, what the hell was that? What are you doing? But he's also an amazing athlete. So a team that takes him is going to think, well, if I coach him up, he could be good. And they're right if you can coach him up, but I don't know if you can. He is smart. He's a high character kid. He gets good grades. He's got a good family.
Yep.
And they like all of that. So they like the intangibles. Sure. They like the raw physical ability. They just haven't seen the guy put it together yet. I think somebody's going to burn a 3 on him at least.
Yep.
Maybe even a second. He may not be there in the third for the Steelers. Yep. So my reaction would be, okay, he's a project, which I don't like. I don't like grabbing a project on day 2, but by the same token, if you don't grab him there, you're not getting him.
You're exactly right. That's the conundrum that teams find themselves in now when they need a quarterback. You're probably going to have to burn a pick a lot earlier than you want because someone else will, which then gets us into the whole territory of the Jackson Darts of the world and guys that really none of us have as first and second round guys, but that's where they're going to go because teams are so desperate to find that guy, that quarterback. But as far as the current quarterback situation, Mr. Ayahasku is continuing to control things and do as he not. I mean, is it down to us? I mean, is anybody else interested in him at this point? Ryan Scarpino? Does anybody else want the stash Rodgers?
I mean, I don't know. No, I think the Giants are still holding out. Obviously, it sounds like we are. The Vikings said they're not interested,
right?
And I don't know why they would be. I even if it's a 1-year deal, even if it's a 1-year deal. I mean, he's probably going to get paid $25 to $30 million, and I'm just not interested in that, man. I'm just not. And, I hate to say it, but, sort of like last year, the 2 teams that were interested in Russ were the Giants and the Steelers.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. It's very similar.
And we saw how that worked out for us, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I thought Russ was cooking middle of the season. And then at the end, he was doing the exact opposite of cooking.
Right.
Like he was like Walter White cooking in the middle of the season. And then he was like cooking like Jesse Pinkman without Walter White. And it just wasn't good. And we are with Rodgers. It's either the Giants or the Steelers. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, it's like, shit, I know the Rooneys and the Maras are close. I know
they are.
I know they're both 2 family-owned organizations. But like, do we really want to be in the same conversation as the New York Football Giants?
Right.
And I don't want to be. And I really do think that Aaron Rodgers was hoping somehow that the Vikings would be interested in him.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it is ironic that he would literally follow the Brett Favre timeline.
Oh my God!
Doing so, but if I'm Rodgers, it's like they have a great defense.
Yeah.
They have 2 stud wide receivers, a great tight end,
yep.
Good offensive line, good running backs.
Oh yeah, easy to see why he wants to go to Minnesota, right?
And familiarity with the NFC North, of course. Mm-hmm. He has no familiarity with the NFC East other than playing for the Packers. But, is he ready for AFC North ball? I don't think he is. So and I don't want to steal Casey's thunder, but I just –
Oh, no.
I hate that – I really do hate that we're at this point with Aaron Rodgers. And, this is just such a Browns – desperation. This is like a Browns move. They're just so desperate. And Ben, go ahead. Sound like you want to say something. Well, you're on mute, but that's okay.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying, right? Fuck. Oh yeah. My God. That's it.
Ian, if I can add, yeah,
go ahead. But I'm going to ask you a question too. Let's say it is Rodgers. What's the worst possible thing that could happen and I know in my head what I'm thinking, and I want to see if you guys are too. What's the worst possible thing that could happen if Aaron Rodgers is the guy for this year?
That we go 8-9 and just barely miss the playoffs, and we're stuck in the middle of the draft once again, and we paid him $30 million, $25 million, whatever, just to be mid again. Honestly, I have not seen a single Steelers fan, and I'm on Twitter a lot, probably more than I should be.
Yeah.
And there's Steelers fans from, the happy-go-lucky sunshine and rainbows crew all the way through the super negative. The only people I've seen that actually want Aaron Rodgers on this team are the ones that want Mike Tomlin fired and are saying, we want Rodgers because he'll be so bad it will get Tomlin fired, which is basically like saying, I just want something that will prove the narrative I already have in my head correct.
Yes.
So no fans are going to be excited about this. And we touched on this a little bit last week when we were talking about Mason Rudolph. I honestly think the Steelers' ceiling is higher with Mason Rudolph than it is with Aaron Rodgers. I struggle to see this team winning 9 games with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. He had a better supporting cast with the Jets. He had a better running back group. He had better wide receivers and arguably a better defense, at least a better secondary with the Jets than he did with the Steelers, and played in a division with the shitty Patriots and the Dolphins, who were
a mess.
A mess, right? Like, there's no way he's going to outduel Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. It's just not. Ryan hit it on the head. He's not ready for AFC North football. And he can't move anymore with his ankle or with his Achilles injury. So I have zero excitement about Aaron Rodgers. If he was our quarterback, I would probably feel worse about the team than I did with Russ and Fields and even Pickett. It's just like there's no excitement with signing a 41-year-old guy who's on the downside of his career. The best case scenario, honestly, with Rodgers is that they go like 4-13. And yes, that would be like flushing $30 million down the toilet, but at least you'd get a good draft pick out of it. But they could do that with Mason Rudolph too,
right?
Like,
that's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean, they're gonna pay this guy to come in and maybe win 1, possibly 2 more games than you could with a $4 million Rudy Rudolph. What the fuck is the difference? I made this point weeks ago on this show. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter. We're fucked. We're not going to have a good season. It is what it is.
And you're saying that, Ben, based on the composition of the roster.
Yes. Yeah. Not just the roster, but the remaining quarterbacks, the available options before free agency even started. I was like, it really doesn't matter. I mean, Russ, Fields, they're going to be, about the same effectiveness. Now there's a rumor, speaking of, I'm going off topic here, but the Jets are interested in grabbing Jackson Dart. So they're thinking about taking him and having Fields. Fields is going to feel.
I kind of would feel bad for Fields if that's.
So would I. I'd feel like,
really
well,
would.
You got your $30 million, good for you, but screwed you.
The reason I asked the question, and I'll let Scarps. In fact, you go ahead. What is the worst case scenario with Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback in 2025 for the Steelers?
I think the worst case scenario for Aaron Rodgers joining this team is 9-8, and they get smacked in the first round of the playoffs, and they paid him $30 million to do so. But I would also say even worse than that. Even worse than that. If Aaron Rodgers came here and we went 4-13 and got a top 10 draft pick, sign me up right now. I mean that. I mean that.
And that's best case?
That's best case scenario. But they only pay him like $25 million. And these other teams manage these contracts. I mean, I'm not trying to be the Browns in that situation, but like these other teams spend money all the time and shit doesn't work out, and it's just what it is. But they
well, so Scarps,
good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, the worst case scenario with Rodgers is you pay him 25 or 30 million and he plays above average and they go into the playoffs, round one gets smacked and everybody's like, ooh, man, he played pretty well. To me, that's the worst case scenario because now you're going to kick the can down the road again. And I don't want to be there at all. I will take give me the 4-13 and the top draft pick and him out of here.
Yeah.
I agree with Scarpino that the best case scenario is that if he is the quarterback, he plays like shit. And here's why. Adversity tends to challenge teams and bring out the best or the worst in players. And it'll separate, for lack of a nicer way of putting it, it'll separate the men from the boys.
Yeah.
And the guys that are just there for a paycheck, George Pickens, sorry, will stand out. And that being the case, they'll be gone.
I think there's a number of different scenarios here. And the Omar Khan, Art Rooney too. I'm sure they're curious what the fan base thinks, but they're not making their decisions based on what the fan base thinks. And you guys have alluded to this. Ian, you mentioned it, that it's very, very difficult to find anyone of really any ilk or any generation on Twitter, whether you're in your 60s, whether you're in your 50s, whether you're in your 20s. There's very few people that are like, yeah, bring on Rodgers. I'm excited for it. There's not much of a groundswell for that. And I agree with what you guys are saying regarding Rudy. I mean, if I can pay him $4 million a year and maybe win one less game, I'll take it.
And I would also say that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can I make one point? I didn't think that there was a chance in hell that Mason Rudolph was going to come back here. I really didn't.
Yeah,
and don't you think that he came back here? And the reports are that he had other offers, but don't you think that he came back here to prove a point, especially after he helps the team win the final 3 games of 2023? They go into Buffalo and they lose, but they were within 10 heading into the 4th. It wasn't a blowout as much as people say.
Right.
So then they bring in Russ, and Mason's probably like, yeah, I'm good. So then, whatever the conversation was, I always think about the Happy Gilmore scene where he's like, I'm sorry, I suck. You were right, I was wrong. Like, I feel like, Omar, somebody calling him and be like, you want to come back. So I sit there and think, like, if this dude is willing to come back here, after all the shit that he's been through as a Pittsburgh Steeler, should have been the bridge guy, wasn't, helped us get to the playoffs when we were in the shit. Don't you think that guy's hungry? It's not like you gave him a bunch of money to come here. And if he had other offers, he probably was like, you know what? I know this offense, even though it's slightly better than Matt Canada's. I know this offense. I can do this. And, the fact that they're even entertaining Aaron Rodgers, again, it's kind of like, God damn it. Like, are they sticking it to Mason again?
Yeah.
When they could have, in my opinion, this is just me, but they had a lot of cap space. I know they brought in Metcalf and his contract details just came out, but I just felt that they could have made a bigger splash in free agency this year with knowing that, we're going to roll with Mason this year. Especially after the Fields deal didn't work out. And I don't like this Rodgers thing lingering. I just don't.
No, I'm right with you. None of us do. By the way, Jen, that's a fantastic comment. Best case, Russ Wilson signs with the Browns and Pickett has to battle him for the backup. Oh, the irony. That'd be fantastic. Ben?
quick point. I don't think the Steelers ever screwed Mason over for starters. I think that, okay, yeah, he didn't really have a chance to be the starter Kenny Pickett's rookie year. And he was told it was going to be a competition, and it was a competition between Trubisky and Kenny. So if you want to say that's screwing him over, fine. But they offered Rodgers before they even pursued Mason this year. And, it is what it is. I don't think they're fucking him over. And second, after thinking this through, since last week when we were all like, fuck this guy, especially me, I think that it isn't that Rodgers likes the attention. I think that he's not screwing with them. I truly believe that. I think this is just what he does. This is just him.
I would agree with that.
This is why he pisses so many people off. This is just what he does. He's difficult to work with. He's one of those people that is difficult to work with. And we've all been around them, and they don't mean it. They don't mean it like that. This is just what they do. This is their process, and it's a pain in the ass. That, for me, would be enough to be like, yeah, no, I don't want to work with this guy. No, let's end it now. But apparently it's not enough for Mike Tomlin, who really, really wants this guy now. And, the guy above him is not saying no. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I that's where I'm at too, and I think we're all just continuing to be in this position of limbo, brought to you by Aaron Rodgers and slow walks on the beach. Ian, you wanted to make a comment about DK Metcalf real quick.
Yes. So Aaron mentioned this in the chat also, that some contract details have come out for Metcalf's contract. And there's two things I think that are noteworthy here, because we all saw the number, right? 4-year, $132 million extension that he signed with the Steelers, essentially making him the highest paid player on the roster from an average annual value standpoint and all that. But two things of note. One, that the Steelers guaranteed $80 million to him. So that includes both the signing bonus and his full 2026 salary of $25 million. And I think, Ben can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is one of the first times the Steelers have guaranteed money outside of year one of the contract, because for a long time, they would never guarantee money past the first year.
Not the first time.
Okay, maybe not the first time, but it's rare.
First time for an outside player.
Outside player.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that part is true.
Okay. The other thing, though, the flip side of that is that after those first 2 years, which are 2025, 2026, Metcalf has roster bonuses every year that are due on the 5th day of the league year. So in functionality, it's a 2-year contract with 3 team option years that they could cut him after 2 years and not be in the hole cap wise.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, year 3, you could cut him, take $18 million in dead money, but save $14 million against the cap. So it's not like the Antonio Brown situation where they were looking at basically cutting or trading him and it being a cap neutral because of how much dead money they had to take on. So it's functionally a 2-year deal that's all guaranteed in the first 2 years. And then after that, the team could keep him or let him go. And actually, he turns 30 in 2027. So we'll see how it works out if they decide to keep him or let him go for his age 30, age 31, age 32 season. So actually, it's a pretty good team-friendly contract overall, even though the numbers look kind of astronomical when we first saw
it. Just real quick. Go ahead, Ben.
Just real quickly, I just want to make the point that the way it's structured, if they cut him after 2 years, yes, they would have to pay him any more money, but there would be an effect because there would be a lot of dead money. He's got $80 million coming the first 2 years, and there'd be a shit ton of dead money if he left after year 2.
No, 18. That's it.
Yeah, okay. It's a lot.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
My question is this: does that contract, now that we know more of the details to it, does that affect any of you three? Does that affect your opinion at all on whether or not they deal George Pickens?
They're not going to pay. They're not going to pay Pickens,
right?
So I mean, let him play this year. Let him walk in free agency and get a comp pick for him.
Okay, all right. Scarps, what do you think?
They could do that, or they could trade him now and get a decent pick before the draft.
Do you guys think that there's been, well, this is a rhetorical question because I know it's the NFL, these things happen, but you have to assume there's been some phone calls made about George Pickens, and my guess is the prices that teams are asking probably isn't up to what Omar Khan wants in return.
I think what Omar has said is he's not on the block, because just like the Falcons, he's slow playing it and going, yeah, I'm going to wait this out, and we're going to see how desperate teams are and what they're actually willing to pay. And let's see what the market really is. And if there's a market, we'll take advantage of it. And if not, we'll do exactly what Ian just said, and we'll just let him play out his last year and leave. And we'll take our third round comp pick when he signs someplace else. But what we would prefer is getting a draft pick now rather than a third round comp pick in 2027.
Yeah, I think good.
Well, I was just going to say, well, I want to get to a little more in-depth discussion on Mike Tomlin tonight too, and we'll do that in just a minute. Ryan, go ahead with your comment, and then I had one more item before we get to time.
There's what you say and what you do. They said that they had full faith in Kenny Pickett, and they traded him a month, not a month later. So, having a conversation with George, and we think he's great. We want him to be great here. I'm going to say this, and I've said this for years now, and you can call me a hater, you can call me whatever you want. Guy's never going to get it. He is never going to get it. And I'm going to tell you who the number one target is right now, DK Metcalf. And if they don't throw the ball to the guy that they just paid $150 million to all the time, they're stupid. Like, George Pickens is going to be a problem this year, like he's always been. So I think you need to try to get better than a third now than to get a third for him next year when he's inevitably going to walk. Because
2 years from now, 2 years, you don't get him same year. You get him the year after.
I bet. Sorry.
Yeah. You're right, Ben.
But you're not going to get anything from him next year if you let him walk.
Right.
Correct. So, get something now than rather wait 2 years. I just, they're not going to pay. Like, listen, the smartest thing the Bengals did, and it was signed. That was the best thing they could have done, was to sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Now, I'm not saying overall, but I'm saying, like, if you want to really keep your best players, but I sit there and think, like, Ben, like, the Steelers signed Minka and TJ and Cam Hayward, and what have they ever won? You know what I mean? So, like, if we're going to shit on the Bengals for signing Burrow and Chase and Higgins, I think we need to think about it. But getting back to the Pickens thing. Getting back to Pickens, and I'll finish it here. I would rather have something now for him to try to build for 2026 than to let him walk next year and not get something for him until 2027.
That's fair.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted, or Ben, did you have a final point on Pickens?
I did. And it wasn't on Pickens. It was regarding T. Higgins in particular. That's a 1 year deal. That's a 1 year deal with 4 team options behind it.
Wow.
It's a 1 year deal. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's 1 year deal with 4 team options behind it. So at any point, but what they did was they mitigated their risk. They're married to Burrow and they're married to Chase, but they're not married to Higgins.
Not so much with him. The one last contract piece I wanted to talk about was related to TJ Watt, because we've seen now that Max Crosby has gotten paid, and we saw, of course, that Danielle Hunter got a pretty big chunk of money as well.
So
like 30.
Danielle?
I think it's Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, spelled Danielle, but it's, I believe, pronounced Danielle.
Okay, thank you.
Where,
I appreciate the correction.
Well,
Seriously.
I think that's correct. Where does this leave TJ Watt and the Steelers in terms of an extension? I mean, is he going to get more than both of those guys?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not a fan of it. I'm sorry. I know why he's going to get it, but I'm not a fan of it.
I don't disagree with you, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's going to happen. And I love TJ. He's one of my all-time favorites. Always will be. It's not,
he's
really.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
And the thing you have to look back at is Dan in particular talking about how much he regretted letting Hall of Famers walk. He thought he had a deal with Rod Woodson. He thought he had a deal. They tried playing hardball with Franco. He walked.
Yep.
They thought they had a deal with Rod Woodson. They even scheduled a news conference to announce it. They were excited. And overnight, Woodson changed his mind and went and played in San Francisco for less.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be a free agent.
Right.
Free. So, I think that they're going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that TJ does not hit the market. I'm sure that Omar, since he's a numbers guy, is looking at it from the standpoint of, gosh, I should have extended him last year. I shouldn't have waited. If it's a surefire guy, a guy you're going to extend, do it with 2 years left on the deal. Break the rule. Break the Steelers rule. Do it with 2 years left because it's a special exception, But they did it once for Ben. A long time.
No, they did, and I just, I'm curious to see where this goes. Do you guys think this will be more of a like a after the draft summertime type thing? Is that what it's looking like?
There's probably going to be some negotiation. I think the Hunter deal is probably a good baseline for an average value. Now, Hunter only got a 1 year extension.
Yeah, just 1 year. Yep.
It's not a whole lot, and they tacked some void years onto it and all that stuff that, the fancy cap math that happens now. I can't see the Steelers just doing a 1 year extension. I think why Hunter is noteworthy is that he's also 31 years old, as is Trey Hendrickson. So those three guys between Watt, Hendrickson, and Hunter are all the same age. Hendrickson's coming off a year where he led the league in sacks, and maybe Watt's agent's telling him wait and see what Hendrickson gets and, go for something like that. When you start to get over 30, the dynamics change because you're not at the peak of your career anymore. Now, granted, Myles Garrett is 30 years old, but the Browns had to pay the asshole tax to, because they're Cleveland and sucked there. So
the Cleveland tax.
Cleveland tax.
Exactly.
The Cleveland tax. I mean, seriously, I'm not being a smartass. Yes, I don't like Cleveland. Really just don't like their fans. But there is a thing in NFL circles, and it's a real thing regarded as the Cleveland tax, where Cleveland is basically paying players a little bit more because they don't want to go play there, and so they've got to pay the Cleveland tax.
So overall, I think somewhere around 35 million, probably not 40 million a year that Garrett got, but I think now that you've got Crosby and Hunter around 35 million a year and Bosa's at 34, I think probably land somewhere around there for TJ.
Yeah.
Which is a ton of money. It's an insane amount of money, but it is what it is.
Yep. I want to get into Mike Tomlin a little bit, although I believe Randy Fiechner, Nacho Dip, has a point to make, however.
Ian, I'm going to disagree with you and say it is what it is because they don't have to pay him. They don't. Just like they don't have to pay George Pickens. And I hated the fact that his brother went to bat for him on Pat McAfee, but he was right. They should have re-signed him last year.
Yeah.
And now they're in a shitty situation because they're going to have to pay a guy who's on the other end of an edge rusher's career, and they're absolutely going to do it. And I don't agree with it. They should have tried to trade him last year if they weren't considering re-signing him last year. And I'm concerned that has been alluded to earlier, their willingness and their almost, it's not even just a willingness, their commitment to keeping our own greats is going to bite them this time.
Are we having this conversation if TJ had 17 and a half sacks last year?
Probably not.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think prior to 2024, they were certain that this spring they were going to extend him.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never any moment where they should have traded him, because they were certain that he was going to be the guy that he's always been, and that they wanted to extend him after last season, this spring, where we're at right now. So I still am in the camp that rather than trying to trade him last year or even this year, because I know they're not going to, so I'm not going to try and hope for something that I know is going to happen.
I know.
That they should have extended him last season. They should have broken their own rule and been like, this is a special situation, special player, breaking a rule, 2 years left. We're rewarding him now. And hopefully, the Steelers are evolving. I know they do it slowly.
Yeah.
They're all about, stability and tradition and all of that. And it's great. That's wonderful. Although they are going to start the fourth different quarterback 4 years in a row. This will be the fourth year in a row that we have a different starting quarterback on opening day. Fourth.
Certainly trending that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually it has to be now that Fields is gone. I wanted to talk a little Mike Tomlin tonight. It's been 15 years since the Steelers were last in the Super Bowl, which I know makes Randy Fichtner here on the show very old, as he was there. But it's been 15 years, and a lot of things have changed. People come and go, everything else. Mike Tomlin continues to be the one constant. And Ryan, I'll go ahead and make the disclaimer for you. You know Mike Tomlin. You worked with Mike Tomlin. You've never shied away from being critical or heaping praise on Mike Tomlin, and I don't think you will in this case either. So I'll start with you. But does the quarterback situation right now, does this have the unfortunate handprints or fingerprints of Mike Tomlin on it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how you can say that Mike Tomlin doesn't have a role in player personnel or roster construction, particularly when the guys that Mike Tomlin had worked with for a long time, like Kevin Colbert and Brandon Hunt, are no longer there. Anytime there's any changes in any organization and you've been there a long time, like Mike Tomlin, there's an opportunity to seize power. And that is not a knock on Mike Tomlin. That's just a natural reaction for anyone that, anybody in any job. Hey, I've been here a long time. There's people on my same level that are leaving. I could step into a more advanced role. So people sit there thinking like, oh, no, Mike Tomlin doesn't have any say in this or any say in that. You're full of shit. Like, I love Mike. Mike was very good to me. Loved working with him, and I got to see him, and I've said this on the show, I got to see him in a different light than you see him in his press conferences.
Right.
And that's why I defend him, because I do believe he believes in the standard is the standard. I know it's cliche, but I do believe that he believes in that.
Sure.
But he is not absolved of blame. He is just as important in that organization, or just, you want to call it the big three. If you want to throw in Andy Weidel, that's fine. Just as if you wanted to throw in Brandon Hunt when Kevin was there, that's fine. But like, the head coach doesn't just coach. All right.
Right.
He does a lot more than that. And he's involved in organizational decisions, strategic business decisions. He's not just a coach. He's not just an X's and O's guy. And if you want to judge him strictly on X's and O's, he has fallen way short. And I think that if you expand that to saying, okay, well, he has a bigger role, he's doing a lot of different things, I think that helps his case. Bottom line, they haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season.
Yep.
And you can't tell me, and I mean this, you can't tell me that in 2018, when they drafted Terrell Edmonds in the first round, that Mike Tomlin didn't have a say in that.
Right.
I'm just like, you can't tell me that like Mike Tomlin wasn't involved in that, just as when David DeCastro fell to number 24 in 2012, you don't think Mike Tomlin was like, fucking send it in right now.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to credit Mike when credit is due. I'm going to critique him when critique is due. And to me, he is and he used to be great. He's a really good coach. He's great in the regular season, not so great in the postseason. And that is like, if, and I argue with people on X or whatever all the time about this because they think I'm like knocking him for it. Hey, Marty Schottenheimer was a really good regular season coach. He was shit in the playoffs.
Yep.
Mike Tomlin is better than Marty Schottenheimer in the playoffs, but what does that really mean? I mean, he won a Super Bowl. That was a long, long time ago. But at the end of the day, what have you done for me lately? And I mean this. If Mike Tomlin was the head coach of any other team, I highly doubt he would still be the head coach if you don't win a playoff game for 8 years.
Ben,
I think, okay, first, I've always said this, and I will stand by it till I die. Great players make good coaches. They do. Great players make great coaches. Andy Reid got fired in Philly because he had a pretty good quarterbacks, and couldn't do it. He just couldn't get over the mountain. He gets Patrick Mahomes, and now all of a sudden he's recognized as this great coach. No, it's the great player. The great player out on the field making shit happen. That's why he's great.
So you're saying, Ben, just devil's advocate, and I know this is going to sound funny, and part of it is intended to be, Alex Smith is still the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs.
They have zero Super Bowls.
And there you go. To your point, great players make great coaches.
Exactly. They could have that entire supporting cast, but if Alex Smith is still there, they have 0 Super Bowl wins. None. Okay. However, and while I do want to give Mike credit for the fact that I think he takes 6-7 win rosters, and every year he pulls a few wins out of his ass and turns it into a winning season every goddamn year, just like he did in 2019, which I still think was his best coaching job ever, and he went 8-8. But I think he coaches very well for what he has. However, he plays a key role. I want to emphasize key role in roster development and roster building. So if it's a shitty roster, Mike is just as guilty as anybody else in the organization and should be held to account for that. And it is a shitty roster. The roster right now is garbage. They missed on a whole lot of first-round picks. And Mike was involved in all of those.
Yeah. Yeah, there is
as Scarves pointed out, and I agree with him.
Artie Burns, Terrell Edmonds. Yeah. Ian, where do you can fall on it?
Yeah. And I've always said, Craig, good friend of the show, I've argued with him on Twitter a lot that there's a gray area with Tomlin, right? Tomlin is not one of the elite coaches in NFL history,
Right.
but Tomlin is also not terrible. He's a good but not great coach. He's been a good motivator of players, and when shit breaks down, he's a guy who can keep the team on message. As Ben mentioned, he won 8 games with Duck Hodges and a young Mason Rudolph at quarterback. He, pieced things together when, Ben was hurt in other seasons. Charlie Batch won that game in Baltimore, and we went to was it San Diego or LA and won a game with Michael Vick at quarterback.
Yes, Chargers.
San Diego. Yeah. So bad coaches fold in those situations that are just like, well, we're just going, 3-13 this year because our quarterback's hurt and it is what it is. I mean, Tomlin was on his 4th quarterback with Duck Hodges that year and pieced something together. So, there's some credit that's deserved. There's also very valid criticism. Now, some things that we don't know, right? We don't know if Rooney tells him, hey, this is your budget for hiring an offensive coordinator.
Sorry, Ian.
That's a good point. That is a fair point.
Ian doesn't have the new baby pickup yet. I assume
we do have one. It's just over there.
Number 8 for symmetry.
Okay.
Continue.
So Tomlin does deserve plenty of blame for the assistant coaches that he's hired and their failures. Now, the piece we don't know there is we don't know if Rooney said, here's your budget for hiring an offensive coordinator. Go find a guy who will work for that amount of money. I mean, it is possible that Rooney said that, and Tomlin was, somewhat handcuffed by that decision or by the working within that budget. We don't know that, right? And we'll never know that.
True.
So, but he does deserve some, I think, critique for, I'll say, recycling guys and not going out and trying to find young, innovative minds, whether it's on offense or defense, to be coaches. That is a very valid criticism. His in-game clock management is horrendous, but most coaches are. There are very valid critiques there. So I think Tomlin's a good but not great coach. But my parting thought on this, and I know I've talked for a while, I'll turn it over. I know Ryan has a point. My parting thought on Tomlin is that we've all said on this show, and other people have said it too in the chat and elsewhere, that the best thing for this team is probably to have a bad season, a 4, 5, 6 win season, and be able to draft a quarterback. Now, just be prepared that a 4, 5, or 6 win season does not mean Mike Tomlin is a failure as a head coach and needs to be fired, right? That does not, if, they're, like I said earlier, there's people on Twitter that want Aaron Rodgers just so Mike Tomlin might get fired. Like, if Tomlin
he's not going to. You're right, Ben.
Right. But if Tomlin has one bad year, but then you get a really good quarterback out of it, and then all of a sudden are Super Bowl contenders again, like, it doesn't mean that Tomlin's a bad coach because he had one bad season. And I think that's the downside of his, never had a losing season thing, that you've got basically equivalent coaches. I mean, Ryan has talked about this a lot, that Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Pete Carroll, they're the Spider-Man meme all pointing at each other. They're the exact same coach, right? The only difference is those other guys have all had losing seasons and gotten better draft picks and
McCarthy
back from it. Mike McCarthy too. Exactly.
McCarthy too.
Andy Reid before Patrick Mahomes. It's all the same guy. They're all the same coach. It's the Spider-Man pointing at each other.
Yeah.
So really, Mike Tomlin having one bad season does not mean he's a bad coach. It's not the end of the world. I've mentally started to prepare myself for it. I suggest other people do it too. But I just, I want to say and get it out there that if the Steelers are bad, it doesn't have to be a be-all, end-all referendum on Mike Tomlin.
Yet people will make it that.
Oh, absolutely. They will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just needed to say that, get it off my chest.
No, I mean, I don't disagree. I just think that, when I look back at you look back at Cowher. I mean, a 6-10 season. What I think? Did he have a 5-11? No, he never had a 5. It was 6-10.
6-10 was the worst.
Was
he
the
had
worst.
2 7-9s.
Yeah, that's it.
He had back-to-back 7-9s, right? 98 and 99.
Yeah. And I mean, so any inclination that a poor season in 2025 is going to mean the end for Mike Tomlin, I don't think people have paid attention. I mean, you would not only have to have a poor record on the field, you would also have to have just an absolute shit show everywhere else. And even then,
bring in Aaron Rodgers,
which is possible, right? With Aaron Rodgers. I mean, shouldn't the Steelers have just said and just faced reality? Look, we don't want this guy back, but he's like the only one that fits the bill now. Let's just set aside our pride, sit down with Artie Smith and Russ in the same room and say, hey, what's it going to take to squash this? And said, hey, Russ, I'll tell you what, we'll give you 1 year, $10 million. 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, resurrect your career here or not. Up to you.
One of the other parts of Tomlin I wanted to talk about has to actually do with Russ, and it's the fact that Jerry Dulac was very forthcoming with the fact that after that Bengals victory in Cincinnati, or Steelers victory in Cincinnati over the Bengals, which we scored 44 points that day, Smith wasn't thrilled because Russ was doing too much at the line of scrimmage and kind of restricted that down the road or down the end of the season. And obviously we know the result there. If you're Mike Tomlin and it ends up that Rodgers retires or goes elsewhere or something, and Russ becomes that guy just kind of standing there going, hey, me, I mean, can you bring him back? Do you think you can get him and Russell or Art Smith on the same page? I have my doubts.
Apparently they agree with you. They're not even trying. There's no interest. Like they made a very lowball offer at the beginning of free agency, or actually before free agency started, excuse me. And they expected it to offend him that it was so low.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point they pulled it. So I don't know if they were trying to pretend that they were offended by the response, or what. I don't know what the psychology is there. I have no idea. But at some point, they pulled their offer.
This would not be the first time that Mike Tomlin has had to navigate a situation between a quarterback and an offensive coordinator. So I think he's well versed in dealing with this.
Yeah, starting with Wiz.
Yeah.
And Ben, I mean, you've always had, that was pre-Tomlin.
Right.
Wiz and Ben, you've always had headbutting between the quarterback and the OC.
It almost becomes natural.
Yeah. Going, I don't know. Something's up with my I think my earphone is broken. I don't know.
Ben's was broken during pretty much the entire Haley administration.
I think at certain points it certainly was.
It was.
And it certainly was. I mean, Cowher talked about it. Like Ben in 2005 would just do shit and change plays, and Cowher knew he was changing the play, and he's like, but somehow he's making it work. It's 3rd and 9, and Ben's changing the play in the huddle, not the line, in the huddle.
The thing about Charlie talked about Haley and Ben. Yeah, they fought it out, but neither of them will ever. I'm going to read Steelers Freaks tweet.
Wilson reminds me of the college chick I dated and would only take her to drive through McDonald's, but only at 3 a.m.
They'll neither Ben or Todd will ever admit this, but they were both really good for each other's careers.
Yeah.
Like they were the yin and the yang. But getting back to Mike Tomlin, I'll make a quick point.
You're fine. Yep.
You talked about, great players make great coaches. Well, so Mike had Ben and AB and Le'Veon Bell and a great offensive line, but Mike was supposed to be known as this defensive guru, right? And he never had. I mean, so did he not have the best defensive players? To a certain extent, I'll agree with that. But if he's such a great defensive coach, he couldn't have done more with that. And I mean, hell, Ben was not the best postseason performer. He wasn't.
It wasn't.
I'll admit that.
Agreed.
I'll admit it.
Yeah.
But the only reason Mike Tomlin has a Super Bowl is because of Ben. And it wasn't the Jimmy Harrison 100-yard pick six.
No.
It wasn't the Larry Fitzgerald long touchdown. It was that Ben throw to Santonio. So anytime people say, "Oh, Ben sucked in the playoffs," he wasn't the best. Mike Tomlin would not have a Super Bowl win if not for Ben. And Mike Tomlin had Ben a long time. And do great players do great players make great coaches? Yes. Do great players make great coaches? No.
Great coaches. Wait.
I think I know what he meant. Yeah.
Sorry. Whatever.
Yeah.
I've had
you didn't reverse it.
But we're civil. We're civil, so that's good.
I think I think we have to point out that while Tomlin has had some horrific defensive performances, or his teams have, in the playoffs, at least since 2011, the offense didn't do much to help them.
No, turnovers.
Turnovers, short fields, Ben throwing pick sixes. Let's put us in the hole so that those guys can just dictate what the game plan is going to be. It's a lot more difficult to play into those circumstances and come back. Could they have? Yep, they could have. Super Bowl 45, they did come back. They were mounting a fucking comeback, and then our fuckhead Rashard Mendenhall decided to go ahead and fumble it. And granted, that was not a very well blocked play. And I've defended Mendenhall, even though I think he's an asshole and should have held on to the ball there. He should have. He should have held on to the ball there. He should have known it was coming. Should have been ready for it. But it was not a very well blocked play there, and he fucked it up. Anyway, I digress. Point being that Ben, in particular, played very badly in those games where they gave up a lot of points and set up his defense to fail. And that's it. That's my whole point.
Yeah, no, it's true. At the end of the day, your record says what you are, and those still ended up being losses. Doesn't matter how they happened. It's still that way.
Yeah. Parcells. You are what your record says you are.
Exactly. Any other general thoughts on Tomlin? As God, it's hard to believe he started at the age of 35. He's now 52 years old. And
I think we all agree that Mike Tomlin is leaving the Steelers when he decides he's going to leave.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
All of you that are hoping that he's going to get fired, fucking shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which gets filled first.
So that said, though, right? Like we talked about Andy Reid getting Patrick Mahomes. If the Steelers suck next year and get a quarterback, whether it's Arch Manning or somebody else who's actually like a really damn good quarterback, like if Mike Tomlin gets a good quarterback and all of a sudden, we're making AFC Championship games, we're a Super Bowl contender again, like because Lamar Jackson's not getting any younger. He's going to be in his 30s.
Yep.
And, all of a sudden, like, does the narrative change? Does it become like, oh, Mike Tomlin's a really good coach again because we got a quarterback? Like, quarterbacks make coaches. That is what it is, right?
Yeah. But I don't think enough people realize that, though.
Yes.
I think they just want to find something to bitch about and go in that direction.
Well, it isn't just that. They try – I'm sorry, but they try to make sense of things on their own terms, based upon what they understand about the game and they understand about football. And if they don't get it, they blame coaching. If they think it's a really good roster, which Steelers fans do every fucking year,
right,
they blame it on coaching. Honestly, I shit you not, the last handful of seasons, if it wasn't for Mike Tomlin being the head coach, they would have had losing seasons.
No doubt. No,
because
no argument.
In particular, last year, well, the last 3 years, the roster was hot garbage, man. But last year, I mean, they had no skill positions, not really, nothing to speak of on offense that was awe-inspiring. I know people want to believe in Najee and that he's going to somehow resurrect his career in San Diego. That's not who he is. That he ain't that guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't hit the hole fast. He can't get to the edge quickly. I personally think that he came in with too many miles on him from Alabama, that if he came in with fewer, he'd be better. Derrick Henry came in with the same amount of miles coming into the league. That guy is
kept on
superhuman.
Trucking.
He's superhuman. He, every once in a while there's an exception and a guy who can take that kind of abuse and continue to produce. I guess he's the guy because wow. Yeah, the shit he can continue to do is amazing. Najee ain't that guy. Somebody compared him today to Bettis. I'm like, nah. Bettis had more yards per carry his first 4 seasons, and he had one down season where he went through some kind of depression thing, and he wasn't getting many carries, wasn't getting much playing time, and then they traded him to the Steelers the next year for a second-round pick before the draft. And I was like, man, we just traded for a Hall of Fame running back, and sure as shit he was. The next 5 years, he became this guy who was amazing. And even in Bettis' last 4 seasons, he really was just a short yardage back, and it brought his career average down significantly because he was just a guy they brought in to either end the game and just keep running it 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, or a guy that they were like, hey, you know what? It's 1st and goal in the 2. Let's hand the ball to Bennett because even though everybody in the field knows he's getting it, they won't be able to stop him.
Right.
And
no, that was the MO.
He was averaging 10 touchdowns a year his last 4 seasons doing that.
Yep.
Doing nothing but that.
I mean, 3 carries for 1 yard and 3 touchdowns. Was that it?
I was at that game.
Yes,
that was a great game.
It's one of the great stat lines in NFL history.
Like, God damn.
It really was.
The offense would bust their ass to get all the way down to the
remember,
one.
We don't feel bad for Willie Parker.
Let's just give it to Bettis.
Yeah. We'd get all the way down there.
Bettis was the original vulture.
Right.
Fantasy football touchdown.
He really was. Oh, man. Before we wrap things up and turn it over to Casey Kasem, I want to give a shout out to both Cliff and Dom. They have been doing some awesome writing. And Ian, by the way, you might have a little competition, Ian, because Dom fired off about a 2,500 word thing on Georgia football, all the potential draft picks coming out of there tonight. I published that just while we've got going here.
That's passion, folks. That's passion.
Way to go, Tom. I'm very proud of you,
Holmes.
Yes, and Cliff is doing a great job with his prospect profiles and stuff. And great to have these guys. They're hard workers. They're fun, and they do a really good job. So thanks to you guys. And
can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
So obviously we do a little drinking on this show.
No.
Yes.
And it was St. Patrick's Day this past week. So I usually buy Tullamore Dew, but the liquor store was out of Tullamore Dew.
Oh.
So I bought this 4 Walls whiskey, which is a blend of Irish whiskey and American rye whiskey. And it is so smooth.
Really?
No, it's really good.
It sounds revolting.
Okay.
No, it's quite good.
I'll try it.
Yes.
What kind of cost factor are we looking at here?
It was like around $30, so it wasn't bad. Like normal whiskey costs, like decent.
Yeah.
Not top of the line. It's not top of the line Redbreast whiskey, but it's very very, your normal like redemption type cost.
Okay.
Which redemption is excellent too. So
well, indeed. Yeah. All right, guys. Is Casey Kasem in the house and ready to roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Not that there's any pressure after last week's performance, but
I don't even remember that. But whatever.
It was good.
Show must go on. This is Coast to Coast, American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was March 20th, 1979. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is back with us again this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, well, I saw Art Rooney walking with a queen, doing the Werewolves of Pittsburgh. I saw Art Rooney II walking with the queen, doing the Werewolves of Pittsburgh. I saw Troy Polamalu drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's, and his hair was perfect. Derp. Casey, that's, of course, a parody of Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon off his album Excitable Boy. Much like Warren Zevon, the Steelers are going to need lawyers, guns, and money to make a deal with Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, man.
Wow. Woo!
And speaking of excitable boys, Jared Kane from Steelers Twitter posted for the 1,000th time today. I'm just kidding, Jared, if that is your real name. I know you'll post 100 things tomorrow that are even dumber than the 10 things you posted in the last 5 minutes.
Oh,
It's true, though.
No cap, LMFAO. Extend TJ, cry harder. He a Steeler. Casey, I'll be honest with you. I have no idea where this is going. Our toddler has had hand, foot, and mouth disease, and he's been home all week. He's been sick, and I am at the end of my rope like Robin Williams was.
Jesus, dude. Come on.
I'm going to hell. I don't care. Casey, the good news is that hand, foot, and mouth disease is not the same as mad cow disease. I am glad I got that cleared up. I was fully prepared to send my son to RFK Jr. to be tested for any remnants of Dorito dust. Casey, speaking of Dorito dust, the Steelers are literally licking the bottom of the chip bag for a quarterback.
Yep.
Christ, at this point, I'd be okay with Mitch Trubisky, Zach Gentry, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph.
Gentry, a former quarterback, by the way.
Yes. I won't go any further. I cannot believe they are okay with letting Aaron Rodgers hold the cards. Do they not know how Rodgers operates? Like another Rodgers, he knows when to hold them and when to fold them. Well, Ryan, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars and keep your radio tuned right where it is. Falling 15 spots this week, like the Steelers, to number 42. Here's Kenny Rodgers with The Gambler.
Oh, very nice.
I tell you, the Warren Zevon out of the gate, man.
That was
Kind of set the table. That was nice.
It sure did. Outstanding. Once again, 90 minutes of great Steelers talk, and what a great way to finish it. Thanks for everybody that was in the chat tonight. Thanks for everybody that listens or watches on your own. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you spread the word, like, subscribe, all that great stuff, and continue to check out the site, steelcityblitz.com, as we get deep into the draft stuff now. I'll have my first mock draft coming out very, very soon. I know everybody's going to want to see that. So not really. Anyway, for these guys, Steel Dad signing off. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.
fuck the Browns and all